The following is a taped interview with Ross B. Smibert, president of North Star Ice Company, by Mr. Stuart McLean of CBC Radio. This program was aired coast to coast in Canada on CBC Radio and shows some of the old-fashioned values of our family-operated company. Please enjoy.
To ask the question, but do you think it's okay is written all over my face every time I remove my nose from the only piece of meat she's defrosted that afternoon. Now, this summer, are you the smeller?
Yeah.
In a frontal attack on what's perceived as a major character flaw, I was actually put in charge of food freshness. And because we were camping, that meant that I fell into a rather pleasing ritual, the daily trip to the grocery store to buy the block of ice. And it was that job last summer that reminded me, or actually put me in touch with a time that slipped away. There's a time in our history, and it's not so long ago, when ice was something you depended upon. Like when thousands of people went to work.
The ice bar.
The ice man, the ice box.
Yeah.
They went to work. You're just looking so...
Well, I remember it all. I just remember it.
You had the guy that came to your door?
At the farm.
At the farm?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. He didn't come there. You saw your own. The farm, didn't you?
No. He brought the ice and we put it in the ice.
Gentleman farmers.
Yes.
Well, there were times when clipper ships left Canada for England and in Europe piled with ice, when trains left Lake Simcoe to take ice to Chicago and Detroit. And I've been lucky enough, this is the month of the freeze-up, 1989, and this week especially, because Thursdays are the shortest day of the year, I've been lucky enough to find a man who loves ice. His name's Ross Smibert. He lives in London, Ontario, and he's lucky enough to be president of a company called North Star Ice. If you passed through London this summer and you bought a bag of ice cubes for your picnic cooler, chances are you bought it from Ross. We met on Thursday. It was snowing. We met in his office, but it wasn't long before he'd hauled me out to the ice house because he wanted to show me his ice. Okay, and he plunged his arm into an ice bin, and he held up a handful of cubes the way a proud grain farmer might show off a handful of prized seed. Now listen to him.
That is beautiful ice. Now, there's a little piece. I'll put it in my mouth for a minute. And it's just about sparkling clear. I hope. Now, look it. There's nothing in it at all. It's just crystal clear. It's just gorgeous ice. Can't believe how good it is.
Now, his office...
I used to do that, too.
And then hold it up?
You put it in my mouth.
Oh, I still do.
Yeah.
Listen, Ross's office couldn't have been more perfect. I mean, not unlike a ticket office in a country railroad station. His desk was varnished yellow, and the walls on the wall beside his desk, clipped into its special holder, or their special holders, were 10 rubber stamps. Like, pay to the order of, only for deposit. And there was a stamp pad on the desk. He still uses them. The green metal file, no one uses those things anymore. The green metal filing cabinet, complete with a little magnet clip for the invoices, the spike for the phone messages, and best of all, Ross Smibert, sitting in the middle of the room, he looked and talked like he might have stepped out of a short story by Gregory Clark. Right? He was wearing a white T-shirt that just showed at the neck of his blue plaid flannel shirt that was then half covered by the knitted sleeveless button-up cardigan. He also had a blue hat, peaked, that said North Star Ice on it. And he just wanted to tell me about all his friends. Eddie, hell of a guy who used to run the Texaco station. And Harv, real good man who had the Petrocan. And Maurice, another great guy. But most of all, he wanted to tell me about how great his ice is.
When you put it in a glass, like a glass of cold water, it's almost invisible. And then as you drink the water and see it there, it's just shimmering. It's so clear. It's really. I'm even amazed at it. You can read a newspaper through it if you can lay it out in a sheet. It's that clear. I tell you, I love it. Literally.
It sure does.
Did you do that?
You read a paper through it? That's good ice. That's good ice.
Okay, now do you make your own ice or do you buy it from the store, Peter?
I make my own, but when there's, a whole bunch of people coming, I buy it from the store.
Okay.
Not in a block. I buy it, those plastic bags of cubes.
Yeah. So I've always made my own, too, and this is something I've never talked about before, but I've always been secretly ashamed. There was something I didn't do very well.
It's very foggy.
Yeah, and you get the little white lumps floating.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought that this was a sanitary problem. You put the ice in a clear glass of water, the ice melts, it was clear water when you put it in,
yeah.
And then the ice melts, and you got little white lumps floating in your water, or your scotch, worse. Right? So about a year ago, I spent a Saturday afternoon scrubbing my ice trays out, thinking I could get rid of these little white things, and they're still there. I mean, in the ice,
Right.
or in the water when the ice melts.
Mhm.
I mean, no matter how clean I got the trays, my ice is always cloudy, and sometimes it sort of tastes funny. My ice. Ross Smibert smiled and told me you always get the white things in homemade ice because the white things are probably calcium, and will just settle there if the water freezes without moving. He says that the clouds are air bubbles, and they're always going to be there because my ice isn't aerated, and that the funny taste is probably because my ice is contaminated. And he curled his lip when he said this, Peter, contaminated by things like meat that I keep in my refrigerator. Ross said the odors in my freezer are bound to contaminate my ice.
Anytime you have an odor, those are actually solids that have gone into a vapor state. And ice, for some reason, attracts it, just like the charcoal or the baking soda does. And then you're contaminating your ice. And then you use it on, say, even in a glass of water. You know, you don't want to have a nice glass of water to say, that tastes like the roast beef we had last night. You know, that don't go down too good.
Okay, now, I got to tell you, I fell for this guy. He says, you know, buy my ice, you got no odors, you got no white things, and he said, you can do the taste test. He says, put the two glasses beside each other, take a look, there'll be no white things in my ice. I just fell for this guy. I fell for this guy before I knocked on his door, because as well as running the ice business, he runs a laundromat, okay, out of the same building. Same business, he says, using water a different way, that's all. Now, the door for the ice company is around back, right, almost right under the hot air vent for the dryers. So to get to him, you have to walk through the thickest steam like I've ever walked through. It's going to swear you lost
Go through the steam to get to the ice?
Yeah. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Magic time.
Yeah.
And then on the way to his office, he looks at his watch. We're sitting there, you know, and he says, Stuart, you got to stick around long enough to watch us harvest some ice. Harvest, I said?
In the old days, when ice was harvested in fields and rivers, it was harvested in January, February, when it got up to about 12 inches thick. Now, at that time of year, one of the ready source of labor was the farmers. So a lot of the terminology used in the industry and is carried over right to today is from farmers, and they call that harvesting. When they cut those pounds of ice, it's just like plowing a field or harvesting a field of wheat. They were harvesting a field of ice. In fact, they called it fields of ice. So today, when it's been carried into our more modern equipment, when an ice machine drops its load of ice, it's called harvesting. They harvest that load of ice.
So I said that I would wait for the harvest. It was modern machines. But in the meantime, Ross wanted to show me his ice museum. And the museum, yeah, his ice museum. That's not great pieces of ice. The ice museum
Last a long time.
is in the glass cases in the hallway just outside of his office door. And this is his collection of ice picks and tongs and saws and coupons and tokens, all displayed in the finest museum style, complete with the little typed explanatory labels, right? And it was while we were going through the museum that Ross suddenly snapped his fingers and said, "You got to meet Harold." "Who's Harold?" I asked. Ross looked at me without blinking. "The last Iceman in London." Now, Harold arrived.
Yeah.
Ross disappeared into the laundromat and started folding a pile of orange towels because he does all the laundry for the athletic department of Western. Harold sat in Ross's chair and smiled at me. He's wearing a blue hockey jacket and a blue peak cap with North Star Ice written on it. Harold is somewhere in his 60s. He started working on ice trucks when he was 13, Peter. He got into the business through his dad, who began delivering ice in London around the turn of the century. Ross Smibert hopes that Harold will keep driving for 10 more years so that father and son, between the two of them, the Cushman family, will have delivered ice in London for a century.
Yeah.
So Harold thinks that would be okay, he says. Of course, he remembers the days when ice was a bigger business, right? The days you were going. I came right after this. I had the milkman with a horse, but I didn't have the iceman. But he remembers the days when each truck had a driver and 4 men running between the houses and the back of the truck. And the driver, who was also the bookkeeper, and the men used these complicated hand signals to keep the account straight. Those were the days when people put cards up if they wanted ice.
They had red cards in the window if they want 25 pounds, 50 pounds, or 100 pounds. And we'd just cut the block off, whatever the card says they wanted, and take it in and get our money. And if they paid their bill, like you'd do that to them if they paid it.
You'd have a hand sign. You'd sort of swing your hand out like sort of saying safe, like a baseball umpire goes to say
Safe, yeah. And if they charged again, you just like scribble along with your finger.
the way you do if you're asking a waitress for a bill.
Yeah. And then he'd mark it down on a card then that they owed more money. See, that way the truck didn't have to stop.
Harold used to wear his ice pick on his belt like a pistol in his holster. He used to be able to chip a 20-pound.
Those guys could pick it with one tong of the fork, with a pair of tongs, just one in the top and the other one in the side, and they'd carry it just one. They're made of forged iron or something.
That's right.
Yeah, and
Saw it in the museum.
Yeah, he just gets the one handle, pick it up like that. I remember that, and the red card.
And Harold says that he could pick off a 25-pound hunk of ice without looking at the score marks that they put in with a saw back at the factory, right? And these were the days when every house did you choose to keep the pail of water by the side door so the iceman could wash the sawdust off the ice before he took it inside?
No, I guess we didn't.
How much did you pay for ice, do you know?
25 cents, I think.
Right on for 25 cents for 50 pounds. These were the days when people didn't lock their houses, when Harold could let himself in, put the ice in the ice box, pick up whatever money had been left out, and leave the change on top of the kitchen counter, right? The days of home delivery, when every neighborhood echoed with the rattle of the ice truck, the smile of the postman, and the clip-clop of the milkman's horse.
The horses all knew the customers where to stop and everything. You didn't have to stop the horse at all. In fact, my dad delivering the ice years before that, he had a blind team of horses, and they knew who every customer was. They'd stop, and at the end of the street, a dead-end street, they'd turn around and come back the other way. And they just knew it. They knew just like a blind man would. They knew how many steps from there you take. And they're just wonderful horses.
Harold said at this time of the year, when an iceman or a milkman might tarry too long celebrating in someone's house, a good team would wait for a while. But after a while, when it was time to go home, they'd just take themselves home, back to the dairy.
They had the little weight on the leather strap, and then there was a weight made of lead.
Ice.
No, made of metal.
The horse nearest to it would pick the weight up.
Okay.
Leave their driver back there to party in the house. And then he said, Harold did, that he had to go and deliver some ice, which is when Ross Smibert's son, John, poked his head back in the door to say it was time for me to go see one of the ice machines drop a load. Now, I got to tell you, the machines are these rows of refrigerated steel plates. They're kind of like the plates are the size of, say, your dining room table. And they stand horizontally. The dining room table sat up on its end. And water is continually run over these freezing plates until it freezes up about an inch thick. And then the huge sheet of ice is harvested and cut up into the ice cubes that you put in your drink.
It's like Niagara Falls. It just grows on the outside of the plate, a layer at a time over a 45-minute cycle. Then when it goes on defrost, the hot water is sprayed on the backside of the plate, which enables it to break off of the plate, crash down into the crusher bar. Here we go. The water is stopped over here on this side of the machine. Yep, on bank number 1 is already stopped. You'll hear it'll start cracking. It'll get nice and cold in there, and the ice will fall off of that first bank. Popcorn going off. What's all that cracking? Now it's smoking. Holy crow. That's the ice coming off the plate. It's like the end of the world. Like the end of the world. It gets a little scary in the summertime when you get 75 ton running.
Peter, as a child, ice, it's very easy, right now to hate ice at this time of year. As a child, ice was somehow more important to me. I mean, icicles were something I savored, right? Even treasured, took home, put in the fridge, saved till summer. The ice in the northern gutter when the water somehow leaches out of it, and and leaving the leaves and the bubbles suspended in time, and just perfect to be shattered by a boy's boot.
When it stays about an inch above the water,
and it makes that great sound when you step in it, right? Yeah. The ice on the backyard rink, the hollow cylinders of ice plucked from a tree after the storm, the ice hardening in your hair if you can get out of the house without your mom seeing that it's wet. It doesn't cause pneumonia, you know. It's okay. It's just nice to feel. So I'm thinking that perhaps when you're younger, you have a better understanding of the magic of ice, right? Water stopped in time, water which is always on its way somewhere else. I had forgotten all those things till this week.
Stuart McLean.